posture, proximity to the listener. Okay, to the listener. And non-verbal communication can be categorized as, and this is what we're going to study in this session today. That is, what is nonverbal communication, characteristics of nonverbal communication, types of nonverbal communication, color and cultural influences improving nonverbal communication. Now, this nonverbal communication can be categorized as communication environment, where the structure and conditions in which communication takes place, the physical characteristics of the communicator, that is their physical appearance and the objects associated with them, and the behavior of the communicators, which includes body movement, posture, gesture, facial expressions, eye contact, vocal elements. Now, the non-human physical environment has an influence on the people communicating and communication itself. Right. So this is a non-verbal communication is basically something without words. Now, as I already told you, it's like apparent behavior, such as visual, what is like, you can visualize it, such as facial expressions, eyes, touching and tone of voice, and maybe the dress of it, and the posture and spatial distance between two or more people. Now, a communication where action speaks louder than words. So the nonverbal is nothing but it's a communication where action speaks louder than words. Now, according to the social anthropologist Edward T. Hall, in a normal conversation between two persons, less than 35% of the social meanings is actually transmitted by words. So at least 65% of it is conveyed through the body, that is non-verbal channel. Now that is why if you happen to see, you would have sat through some sessions of verbal, kind of seminars or a kind of conference or some kind of a lecture where, the speakers tend to explain a lot with their facial expressions, their gestures, their movements. And you just can't imagine listening to something without the body language in it. So basically here I'm trying to say that along with verbal, this it gets supplemented with this kind of actions and gestures, and which makes it more interesting. Now, talking about the characteristics of non-verbal communication. So, might be intentional or unintentional, ambiguous, primary, continuous, or multi-channeled. So, when you talk about intentional or unintentional, it can be, intentionally you might do it. There are certain, as I told you in the earlier slide, it could be um, you may realize that there is some kind of an action being done, and without notice, I mean, intentionally or unintentionally ambiguous, where it might be, kind of, you actually will not be able to figure out the exact meaning of it. It is quite, I mean, there's no clarity. It's quite unclear about it. Then the primary, uh, sometimes it has to be, you know, the actions are very, very important. Then it's sometimes continuous, and then multi-channeled. Now, what are the various types of non-verbal communication? It is kinesics, paralanguage, vocal interferences, spatial usage, self-presentation, cues. Okay. Now, when you talk about kinesics, what is it? What all things fall under this kinesics? That is eye contact, facial expressions, gesture, posture, touch. Now, sometimes if you've noticed, when we are trying to give a presentation in public or in the group, we tend to be little, kind of fidgetive. I mean, we tend to be very, I mean, kind of a lot of movements are seen in the body because it is actually a kind of a reflection of our state. I mean, like if you are nervous, if you are anxious, all these things are reflected in this kind of a movement. And that kinesics is something which reflects that. So the eye contact, when you try to avoid eye contact, when you don't speak truth, okay, when you are lying about something, you usually tend to avoid eye contact. Then facial expressions, again, maybe you are lying or saying something other than what you're supposed to say, then there is a change in the facial expression. Then there's gesture, posture, and the touch. Okay, all these fall under kinesics. Now, coming to the eye contact, you know, sometimes the eye contact gives a a clue to what exactly you are trying to say. So, though it is not verbally said, but as I said, non-verbal can be. I mean, it's just like action, which speaks volumes, it speaks. So, staring, what does it mean? Challenges. Okay. You're trying to glances. So, it's like socially acceptable timing and appraisal may indicate interest. So, kind of all these three aspects of the eye contact gives you these kind of information. Now, coming to the facial expression, they again reflect emotion, feeling, and attitudes. And somebody said rightly that this is the mirror of our feelings. It is what reflect whatever you are kind of feeling inside is reflected automatically on your face. Then coming to gestures uh, of a person include attitude or movements. For example, when a boy is sad, he may droop his head and walk slowly. Now look at the gesture. Here it implies, okay? Or if a girl is happy, she might run and jump or stand up straight and put her hands in the air. You would have noticed several times, maybe when your results are out, or maybe you have won something what you've expected, right? And that's how you try to show your happiness or sad through these kind of gestures. Right. Posture. What does this posture indicate? Posture is the way you sit, the way you stand, the way you carry yourself, right? So this is also something which speaks about you know reactions to an invasion of your space, getting defensive, becoming aggressive, retaliation. If you are calm and composed, your posture, if you've noticed, will be different. If you're very anxious, if you've noticed, you try to sit at the edge of the chair, ready to attack somebody, right? So these are certain postures which also talk a lot, and this falls into the nonverbal uh, communication. Next, touch. Touch is again another an important aspect. So it kind of gives us a kind of a feeling of security, right? Touching and being touched are essential to a healthy life. Touch can communicate power, empathy, understanding. So if you've noticed, your parents, they would try to, kind of, pat on your back or on your shoulders when you are really sad about something or you have lost hope about something. They try to pacify you by touching your shoulder or maybe just patting on your back or probably holding on to your hand. It shows that they're trying to communicate that it's all okay, right? Nothing to worry about, something which you are undergoing. So touch is very important, non-verbal communication. Then paralanguage, that is something which runs along with our language, that is the pitch, volume, rate, quality, intonation. This is very, very important. So pitch of your voice. How is the pitch? I mean, whether it is screeching or whether it is harsh, whereas the volume, that also tells a lot. Maybe it's high or low, and especially this happens when you are happy, you are quite loud. When you are angry, also, it is like you are at the top of your voice, okay? I mean, you try to yell and shout. Then coming to the rate, I mean, how speed you are at, the sounds which you make, and the quality and intonation. So intonation is rise and fall. That is like, if you've noticed, people when they speak, they usually don't, I mean, there is a kind of a variation in there. There are ups and downs, like a wave, they keep moving up and down. You don't really find it interesting if somebody doesn't have this kind of an rising and falling intonation. This is very, very important aspect in nonverbal communication. So, and this is again is also connected with the verbal communication. That's why it's called para language. So, vocal interferences. Sometimes these are also non-verbal, I mean, fall into non-verbal communications, though they might have a sort of sound, but don't exactly mean what they want to. I mean, they're kind of fillers. They are like, in between you have a sort of small pause or try to interrupt a fluent speech, right? Maybe now certain words like right or you say all these fall under this kind of, they are called as extraneous sounds or words that interrupt fluent speech. And fillers, fillers like, yeah, okay, am I right, or something like that. Okay, you keep on asking for it, right? Now, spatial usage. Spatial, that is the space, the kind of distance. Okay, that's also a body language, right? When two people are talking, anonymous people whom, I mean, they do not know each other. If you have noticed, they're most of the time standing far away. I mean, and when you are with your friends, your close friends, if you've noticed the distance, it's slightly closer compared to an anonymous person. So space also plays an important role. Looking at the space between two people, you can judge. You can say whether the people are known to each other or unknown to each other. So we tend to stay away. With parents, again, with our siblings, it is again totally different. We are kind of very close with them. We literally hug our parents, isn't it? So that's the spatial usage, that proxemics it's called as, and it's called intimate distance, personal distance, social distance, public distance. So anonymous people, we always maintain public distance. In the society with friends and all, it is social distance. Then you have the personal distance with your close associates, friends, or known people. And whereas intimate, it is totally with the people who are very close to you, right? Then the territory. Territory is like, I mean, kind of putting them away from a certain point of distance, right? Okay. Now, self presentation cues, physical appearance. That also talks a lot. It's a non-verbal present communication. Then the time, chronemics, olfactory communication. So, olfactory communication, what is olfactory? Yeah, olfactory. Yes. Can I get an answer of this? What is auditory? It is pertaining to ear. Olfactory. Okay. After I finish, I'll ask you once again. You have to tell me an answer to this. So there is something called uh, self-presentation cues. With this olfactory thing also, you have it. Okay. So physical appearance also. People tend to uh, put up a thing that, they want to look good. And some people actually don't bother. But basically, the way you dress up, the first impression is the best impression. That is what they say, isn't it? So that's how they want to kind of dress up and make sure that their physical appearance, it influences, especially when people go for interviews and all, the dressing thing is very important, isn't it? Right. Now, moving on to the next slide. Okay. Non-verbal communications, like, personal space at work, your office, your desk, a table in the cafeteria that you sit at regularly. Okay. All these speak a lot. Okay. I mean, they kind of reflect your personal space at work, how you kind of, try to keep yourself detached from others. How do you move around in your office, your desk, a table in the cafeteria that you sit at regularly? All these, you know, these kind of, things every day when people watch, they're like form the elements of nonverbal communication. Right. Now, color influences communication. Yellow cheers and elevates moods. Red excites and stimulates. Blue comforts and soothes. Now, in some cultures, black suggests mourning. In some cultures, white suggests purity. Now, this is about the color I'm talking. How does it? How does it fall into the non-verbal communication? Let me tell you. Even on the traffic signal, you see red color. It never says, "Hey, go," but you will stop seeing the red color because that's an indication. Red is a non-verbal cue. Though it tells us, yeah, you have to stop, right? And you would have also seen certain symbols where it shows a skull and two bones, which talk that it's a dangerous thing or some kind of a danger there. Yeah. So those symbols also stand for non-verbal. Even colors stand for non-verbal cues or communication. They kind of tell you about it, they tell something about it, isn't it? Right. And another thing is this non-verbal signals vary from culture to culture. I mean, when you happen to, say sometimes you greet people folding both of your hands, like namaste, isn't it? Or sometimes in Japanese and, kind of Chinese and all, they bow their head, especially the Japanese or Chinese, in fact. They literally bow to their half, the belly, they just literally bend down to greet others. So there are different ways. So if you look, consider this non-verbal signals, they vary from culture to culture. Each culture has their own way of, kind of expressing uh, their body movements and to kind of greet or, to wish people, and it differs, right? Now look at this thumb, the thumb raised up, which shows that in United States, it does fall under nonverbal cues, right? Thumb raised thumb, right? It's a symbol for good job. Yeah, good job. I think nowadays it's catching up with us also. We try to show it as good job, right? With a thumb up. I think that's also there as an emoticon, right? In the mobile phones. When WhatsApp, you have to say something like very nice, you have a symbol for it for very nice, or it's fine, you use this kind of a emoticon. Then in Germany, the number one. In Japan, the number five. In Ghana, an insult. In Malaysia, the thumb is used to point rather than a finger. So here we have a pointing finger, but there in Malaysia, it's the thumb which is supposed to be pointing, right? So it differs from place to place and culture to culture. Right. Now you have, in case you want to improve your non-verbal communications, that's very, very important because people might mistake them. They might misunderstand people for some reason. Like, for example, you know, when you are talking to somebody and maybe somebody says, I mean, there's a kind of a discussion and you try to raise your brows and as if you are surprised to hear that news. I mean, that is like sometimes it's quite offensive, right? They will take it as, I mean, though you haven't verbally spelt out anything, but still you raise your brows. I mean, you find it quite surprising. So they may not like it. So that is how you have to make sure that you improve non-verbal communication skills along with your verbal communication skills. So when sending messages, be conscious of non-verbal behavior, be purposeful in use of non-verbals. Make sure non-verbals are not distracting. Match verbal and non-verbal communication. How is that? Now you are trying to show a small ant. You will put your hands together to such an extent that you will try to show it as small, very small figure and a small creature. Now for a big elephant, you try to put your hands apart to such an extent to show that it's a huge and a very big animal. But then what if I try to show a small hand gesture to a big elephant and a big hand gesture for a small ant? How does it look? It sounds funny, isn't it? Similarly, you always have to remember that you have to match verbal and non-verbal communication and adapt to the situation. According to the situation, you have to adapt. Now, when receiving messages, okay, fine. Previous slide talked about when you are sending messages. That was what I have told you. Now, what if you are receiving messages? What do you do? Yeah, don't automatically assume. We most of the time do it. Even before the person I mean, has finished it, you try to jump to conclusions, isn't it? Don't you do that? Yeah, right. And you assume, oh, maybe this is what he's trying to say, and simply you just jump into it, right? No, don't do it. Don't automatically assume. Consider gender, culture, and individual differences. So when you are receiving, be graceful. I mean, you have to consider all this. Okay. If maybe the culture or the individual differences, gender, don't try to, expect something which you are liking it or which you want it to be, reflected from the other person. You have to consider. Then pay attention to all aspects of nonverbal communication. Use perception checking. Now, what are the functions of nonverbal communication? So far we've been talking about the nonverbal communication and all the aspects of it, elements of it, while sending what and while receiving, how are we supposed to, and what are the best thing to be done when you have to really improve your nonverbal. All this we've covered. So coming to the functions of nonverbal communication. So what I mean, where and all we get uh, uh, where uh, where are the uses of this nonverbal communication? Right? Repeating, saying okay with your hands and verbally. No, that is what we discussed just now. I mean, this is how we try to say with our hands. Okay, right? Complimenting. And then again, substituting. I mean, substituting what's up with a head nod. I mean, you are not saying it completely, but just with a nod of your head, you try to say, what's up? Yeah, what's up? You just nod your head. Accenting. And accenting is what, I mean, you want to kind of uh, emphasize the verbal message. It was your idea. This is what you try to stress on that particular word. So you don't simply say it was your idea. You want to kind of confront, you want to blame it on to somebody. What do? It was your idea. See, you accent it to such an extent, right? I mean, that those are the places where we use that is it trying to show the functions. Okay, while pointing a finger, we point out the finger, right? Then regulating. Regulating is nothing but a continuous feedback kind of a thing, nodding head in a conversation. We constantly say yes or no, or kind of, we just simply nod our head. Then contradicting. I'm not yelling while yelling. So again, same thing, just like the accenting. You are yelling. I am not yelling. And at the same time, you are yelling it, contradicting. Then deceiving. This is again, or fingers crossed behind back, all these kind of, which shows, which reflects, okay, your personality, right? Now what does this mean? Now I've given you some food for thought. Now you tell me what exactly, you look at it and tell me what exactly it is. What does it stand for? Yeah, they are called as emojis, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So they are, again, they stand for non-verbal communication in the digital world. Yes, because we are constantly in touch with each other through this kind of a digital gadget, isn't it? This gadget, which has, I mean, when you are chatting or when you're messaging somebody, this is one of the convenient method, isn't it? So these are the emojis. When you are happy, what is it? When you are, I mean, this is also non-verbal, isn't it? You are not speaking there. You are not uttering something there. There is no
Yes,
verbal statement there, right? This is this is a communication in the digital world. Now, not only that, there is something called avatar also, right?
yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yeah. These days, people are coming up with different avatars or something like that, and they want to put it up, showcase. Yeah. So, so these are some of the non-verbal um, uh, communication through these kind of things like in the digital world. Okay. So with this, we finished the non-verbal communication of the first block, right? Now we are going to move on to the next thing. That is, what is our next unit? Oh, okay. I wanted to ask you something about what was it? Olfactory? What is it? Does anyone has an answer to it? Nobody? Oh, you're chatting. I'm unable to see because um oh, Pranati here. Okay, I will try to share it, right? Okay. Oh, I didn't notice your chat over here, right? I will do it. I'll do it. So what is olfactory? Something to do with your smell, right? Olfactory, smell, something related to your nose. Okay. So let me stop sharing this PPT and start with another. Right. So before I start sharing another PPT, let me just give you a brief outline about this block. Okay. So this is block 2, history of English.
Okay,
So
ma'am.
when I say, yeah, history of English, which talks about how this language, English, has originated, where did it start from? Okay, from which part of the country or which part of the place. Now, basically, when you say English, we always remember either the British and we think it is the language which originated there, isn't it? Not so, right? So today we're going to look into the block 2, history of English, which introduces us to the history of the English language within the social, cultural, and political background of the changing times. Now, here, this block attempts to trace the evolution of English from the Old English to the modern English times. Now, here we have got 3 units in this block. The first unit talks about the roots of English, the language family it belongs to, and also discusses the major historical developments in British history which have influenced the growth of English. Now, second unit talks about the major changes that have taken place in the language itself at the levels of spelling, pronunciation, and grammar. The unit 3 will help us to comprehend how the vocabulary of English has evolved and expanded over time by change of meaning, word formation processes, and borrowing from other languages. Now, overall, this block helps us to explore the intricacies of language history and the historical influence on the English language as we use it today. So, over to the first unit, that is the fourth unit, sorry, unit 4, evolution of English. So let me just share the screen with you. Then I'll start the session. If you really have to say something, kindly unmute yourself. And then because I cannot read the chat as I'm sharing the screen.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. Right. So the evolution of English language. So before we talk about the evolution of English language, let us move into the history of the English language. So as we have already done this in the previous chapter, that is about the language. Forget about English, any other language for that matter. It takes over centuries of time. As it develops, it changes. Okay, it's not. I mean, a quick thing where it takes some time for it to develop and then undergo a sort of process, and then slowly things start changing. And then it's because it's dynamic. As I told you, language is dynamic, it's not static, and it keeps on evolving and evolving, addition to it, and the vocabulary keeps on adding it to it, and and the meanings keep changing, and it goes on. Why? Because of the usage of the people. Now, if somebody, I mean, if the language is, I mean, it's not used by many of them, probably a few of them stop using that language, then what happens? It slowly dies away. So such a language where people don't use it, it's called a dead language. I mean, you hardly get to see it other than some manuscripts or some stored documents and so on. So a language develops over centuries of time, and as it develops, it changes. We have no idea when English language has started. Right. Now look at this. I hope this is um, can you see the whole slide here? Yeah. Now you
Yes,
just
ma'am.
cannot read a single word out of it. I'm just trying to show you a sample of the Old English, whereas it is absolutely incomprehensible. I mean, you just can't read it. Why? Because it's Old English. So now, if you
Yes,
can, you know, look at the modern English part of it, then you will understand. Oh my God, to what an extent it has changed. Then you will realize, right? So it says actually it's a prayer, right? Father, thou art, uh, the English, the present modern version. I think I don't have that slide, but that is actually the prayer, okay, from the Bible. Oh, here it is. So it's Lord's Prayer in Old English, say around 1000 AD, somewhere around. Now the same thing has been translated into English. Can you see this? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Yeah, but the
yes, ma'am.
same thing during that period of time, the same English, it's not any other language, it is English. See the change now. There's a tremendous change, except for a few, maybe you can just guess it. Otherwise, it's absolutely difficult. You can't comprehend it, right? So, right. Now, basically, now this is a language family, okay? This is also called as the Indo-European family. Now, this refers to a group of languages, and some of which are currently in use, such as English, French, Greek, Hindi, and some others which are dead, no longer in use. Okay, as I told you earlier, like in um, Latin and Sanskrit, only in some kind of, as I told you, in some, in the poetic form or somewhere, it's like, I mean, it's not in the usage. And all these languages are believed to have the same common ancestor in the past. How nice to see all these languages, they kind of have the same root ancestor, the same common ancestor in the past. Now it's one of the largest language families in the world with 443 languages. Now this language family spread throughout Europe and parts of South Asia, and later through colonization to the rest of the globe. Right. You can see the Indo-European family, which is called Proto-Indo-European, which is again branching out to so many other languages. Now, if you look at the Germanic from the branching of that, then you will understand where the English has come from. Okay? Right. So this is the Germanic branch, and English is a branch of this Germany and Germanic language itself, right? So they are called a language family because they are believed to be the descendants of a parent language spoken in Central Europe in the late Stone Age. Now, there are no written records about it, but similar words in many languages have made it possible to reconstruct the possible original forms. On the next slide, there are some common Indo-European words. Now, if you look at this, you will understand that, oh, they all belong to one parent family itself, right? Now, can you read the words? Just try to.
No, ma'am.
Indo-European, yeah? The spelling is slightly different, but if you look at the pronunciation, the final pronunciation, like for example, like Sanskrit Pita, it's Indo-European, it says Patha, Pather or Pother, and then the Greek says Pater, then Latin it's Pater. That's how there's a word called paternal. Have you noticed? From pater, paternal, it came the father. Okay, then the English modern is father. Okay, and then the tree, how it is pronounced earlier in Indo-European languages. Then you have hundreds, how it is in the modern English, and then Satam in Sanskrit. Satam, Shatamanam Bhava. Shatam, we have heard about this word, right? From there it
Yes, ma'am.
comes centum in Latin, and then 100 in English, right? Then you have this admin, sorry, eat. Yeah, eat. It goes on. I mean, from the English, you move towards back. Then you will understand the word. In Indo-European, it says ed. Okay, then the yolk, yugam, then beer or bear. Sorry, it's a verb, so bear. It's a bero, bharami, fero, baira, or all such kind of words. So what does it indicate? These words? That means there is one common ancestral language through which, I mean, all these emerged with the kind of slight modifications and customized words, you can say it, right? So basically, England, the so-called England, uh, people did, I mean, the English language did not evolve from this place. Actually, the Germanic tribes earlier, even to, prior to Germanic tribes, it was Celts and Romans were surviving there in that place. And they have, I mean, they were kind of protecting this piece of land. People, in fact, the Romans especially, and the people were Celts. And then after this, the Romans left the country. Then comes the Germanic tribes called Anglo-Saxons, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. These were the three tribal people from the Germanic, and they were called Germany, from Germanic tribes. Okay, they invaded England because you know why? Because of the sea route, which was convenient for them to attack. That was how the people were during those days. They would, look and hunt for fertile lands, and wherever they could, kind of, uh, for the merchandise base also, maybe to, exchange of goods and kind of, the trade and all. To continue with their trade, they would attack. And they found this place to be very productive. Hence, they had to attack this. Why? Because Romans also left. There was nobody to protect them. Hence, they attacked them, and then they started living there. Then, after some point of time, Vikings invaded. Viking are also called as Norsemen. Okay, they are from people from Denmark and Scandinavian. They, they attacked, they invaded, they also landed up there. Then comes Normans. So this is what the whole cycle talks about. Normans are nothing but the French people, right? So Normandy. Okay, they came up, and they have also settled here. So, and basically, if you look at this English language, you have at least a little percentage of all the languages being entered into this English language. So when you look at English language, it's not pure language as such. There's almost like you see Latin words into it, French words because of the Norman invasion. I told you just now about the French. Then the Germanic languages, like from Anglo-Saxons and Jutes have come with their English language, right? And then you have Greek words, you have other languages, and then you have derived, forms also. You have derived, and then words which are derived from proper names also, like you have Lilliputians, these are certain words. So if you look at the yellow color mm, from the pie chart, the yellow portion, it talks about 4% of the words are from the proper names. Okay. And the other one, the violet, is 6% from other languages, and the Greek is orangish yellow, and the Germanic languages is 26%. French is also equally along with Germanic, that is 29%, and Latin comes with 29%. So these three have major share in this language, right?
Okay, ma'am.
Coming to the Romans. Okay, I'll just give you a brief background as to how this, the so-called Britain, what it was, and who were the people who ruled it over, right? So the Romans were the people, and in 43 AD, so an army of 40,000 Roman soldiers invaded Celtic Britain, and the people living there were called Brythons. So Celtic Britain and people were called as Brythons earlier, right? And made it part of the Roman Empire. Now, during the 400-year Roman rule, the Romans introduced Christianity, they introduced Latin, they built roads, they established Roman laws, and kept the fierce Picts and Scots on the north side of Hadrian's Wall. What is this Hadrian Wall? It's actually a wall. I'll tell you, it's in the next slide, where they have constructed it in order to prevent these Picts and Scots. They were from the north side. They were also equally strong and trying to attack this place. So, in order to prevent them from entering this place, they had to build this wall, the Romans. So, it's called as Hadrian's Wall. And see, this is what. Then, they wanted to keep these Picts and Scots from invading the south. This is a kind of a wall, a protecting wall, actually, a huge wall where people could not cross that. Now, talking about the Roman soldier, they spoke Latin, and they were also engineers and built roads to link Rome with the Roman Empire. And they came from the area we call Italy. Rome is still the capital city of Italy. Now, after serving in the army, many soldiers married Celtic women and settled down in England. I mean, some of them left to Italy. And of course, there was a threat from the other countries towards Italy. So the Romans had to rush to their country. So they had to leave this, but some of them did not. They stayed back. They continued to stay and married Celtic women of that place and settled down in England. Right. Now, around 410 AD, Roman rule came to an end. They began to pull all legions, her legions out of Britain in 410 AD after 400 years of Roman rule. See, from 43 to 400, they were ruling it. So Rome was crumbling from the attacks of the barbarians. The Celts were left without the protection of the Roman army and had no weapons to defend themselves. In fact, they were quite happy and, content under the Romans. I mean, their administration was quite strong. And once they left, the thing became so, I mean, they started feeling very insecure about the other Picts and Scots, which were continuously trying to attack them. Now, after the Romans left, the Picts and Scots came south into England. Now, not just that, bands of Vikings came south from Scandinavia. I told you, about Vikings. They were from Scandinavia and Denmark, and they were called as Norsemen because they've come from the north side of it. And the Celts were civilized under the Roman protection because of their rule. As I told you, they were quite civilized people. And Celts were civilized, peace loving, and accustomed to Roman laws. They had not needed to fight for a long time. Now at present, they wanted a help against the Pict and Scots and Viking raiders. Now, here I'm going to talk about the three English periods. Now, after the Romans left, what has happened? From here on, we will start the period of Old English. From the time the Romans left, it's called as Old English, right? Old English period. Then, to some extent, it's called Old. And then from there on, it's called Middle English period. So, say around 1200, it's called Old. From then on, 1100, in fact, it's called Old English. From 1100 to 15 or 14, it's called as Middle English. And hence, from there on, it's called the Modern English. But immediately after the Middle English period, it's called Early Modern English period. Then the later one is called Late Modern English. I mean, the late is nothing but the present Modern English period. Right. Now, coming to the Old English, so descendant of the German language spoken by Angles and Saxons. So, what happened if you look at the history? The Romans left, people leaving these, the England, the Celts to, manage themselves. So, they were under threat of these people. So, then the Angles and Saxons, called the Germanic tribes, invaded the Britain, and these both tribes united to become Anglo-Saxon. I mean, they both they kind of united to become this Anglo-Saxon. Now, their language is English, not English. Please remember, Anglo-Saxon, because it's Angles are called uh, the language spoken by Angles. It's called Anglus, and then it became English. Now, the word which has originated from English is nothing but English, right? So, then again, Anglo-Saxons, uh, then, after the invasion, called it Anglo land because it's Angles or the tribal people of the Germanic thing called Angles, they invaded and hence they called that land as Anglo land. Now, the same land which was called as Anglo land became the England. Okay, now it's called as England, which means land of Angles. Okay, because it's been invaded by Angles, it's called Anglo land or England, which means land of the England. Now, look at the changes which happened before this. Irish missionaries came to England, brought the Latin alphabet, then the Roman invasion. Augustine had come in, attempted to Christianize the England. In fact, you must be wondering what was the religion prior to it. I mean, most of the Celts were pagans. I mean, they would worship the nature. I mean, they didn't have a particular idol worship. So, attempted to Christianize England, established kingdoms all over England. And then what was the result of it? The Latin alphabet became the basis of English alphabet. Romans spread and popularized English throughout England. Yeah. The Old English spoken by Anglo-Saxon people looks incomprehensible. I think just now I showed a slide, which was absolutely, you just cannot figure it out. The prayer, right? It was incomprehensible to today's English speakers. However, there are a good number of words that have survived in modern day English, such as, please remember, these are the words which have come from Old English period itself. Old English, sorry. That is day, year, kiss, love, all such kind of words have come from the Old English. Now, what are the key characteristics of Anglo-Saxon poetry? Now, the poetry, most of the time had Christian ideals, synecdoche, metonymy, irony, and the best surviving example of the Old English period is Beowulf. Beowulf is one where they found it was in a very tattered and a very bad condition, but they could get it. And this is what is the script of the Old English Beowulf, a poem, and also the English version of that, modern English version of that. Okay. So now, during the next few centuries, four dialects of English developed. Now, after the Anglo-Saxon invasion, as I told you, the land was called England and the language was called English, but it was not the same. There were four dialects in that: Northumbrian, Mercian, West Saxon, and Kentish. These were the four dialects of the English language spoken in four different places, like in Northumbria, in Kingdom of Mercia, South and West Kingdom of Wessex, and then and the Southeast England known as Kent. Now, again, I would like to give you some information about this Old English period where Saint Augustine arrived on British soil with the papal mandate of converting the heathen. I mean, they wanted to spread Christianity. So, and then comes in the 800 Viking invasion. Now, the Vikings added many Norse words. Now, please remember, you might be wondering, why are we doing this kind of a history? I mean, we are going into the evolution of English. So, as I told you, the English did not just come from blue. I mean, from nowhere. I mean, there is a story. It's called History of English, Origin of English. So, that's how we need to learn all these points, right? So, Viking invasion, it added many Norse words like sky, egg, cake, skin, leg, window. I mean, these are existing even today, but we never know that they are Norse words. We don't really realize that. We use it in our English language and take it as English words only. Then, so these are some of the remaining words. Then, Celtic words are also survived. Okay, like in place and river names: Devon, Dover, Kent, Trent, Severn, Avon, Thames, and so on. Now look at these words. English and Norse words, both of them coexisted together during that period, 800. Norse words came up with the attack of the Vikings. Okay, they all came, they settled here, married people of this, you know, the place there, and slowly there was a kind of an infusion of their words into the Anglo-Saxon English, right? So and that is the reason why we have so many synonyms in English. The same word, the same meaning, but still we have several other words called synonyms. It's because there are words which have come from the other languages too. So if you look at this Norse and English, now anger is a Norse word. What about the English word? It's wrath. In Norse, they say nay. In English, they say,
No.
yeah, no. Very good. Fro is the Norse word. From is the English word. But there is sometimes we use this fro, to and fro, right? Then Norse is raise. Then in English, rare. You rear children, you raise children, right? Ill is Norse word. Sick is English word, right? Bask is the Norse word. Bathe is English. No, bask in the glory. We call that basking in the glory. Still we use, not that, I mean, they coexist, right? Skill, craft, skin, hide, dyke, ditch, skirt, shirt. Look at this. Skirt is the Norse word, but here we have a different connotation to skirt. Skirt is different and shirt is different for us, right? For English, I'm sorry, for English. Shirt is something else, skirt. But here for Norse, it is skirt, whereas English, it is shirt. That means Norse people call shirt as skirt. Okay. Then scatter is shatter in English. Skip is shift. So when you look at the vowels also, There was quite a good amount of change in vowels also. So in where we say is pronounced as eyes in Old English, ICE. Then again, AC means oak. A with a kind of a hyphen on top of A, ack. It's like a uh, a long a pronunciation of a sound, a long a sound, which makes it oak, right? So there was a kind of a shift in vowel sounds, and okay. So now that the time is up, I'll stop here and continue from here in the next session. Okay. So we are still in block 2. Probably I'll wind it up in the next session. Okay. Right. You also have to read the book, then only you will understand it. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. I hope you understood.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So next class, if you prepare and come, probably if you read the second block, then you will understand it more. I mean, easily. I mean, you will understand it better. So I want you to go through the text when you attend the next session. That is next Sunday. Right.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, ma'am.
Yeah.